بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم اللهم ما علمنا ما ينفعنا وزدنا علما. We begin by the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the beneficent, the most merciful. We praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and we thank Him for giving us this opportunity to be here tonight. This is the beginning of the journey of ilm, inshallah ta'ala. And we hope that inshallah, starting tomorrow, we will have our guest speakers and the shaykh, inshallah. My role, inshallah ta'ala, tonight is to share with you an introduction to the ilm, or the knowledge. Since the theme of this conference is a journey of ilm. And as we all know, a journey is, the path that you take. It's a process. It's not, 1 day or 2 days. It's not just a moment. It's a journey that a person takes to attain the ilm. So, we all know that when we speak about knowledge, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in different ayat in the Quran the importance of seeking knowledge. يرفع الله الذين آمنوا منكم والذين أوتوا العلم درجات قل هل يستوي الذين يعلمون والذين لا يعلمون. And there are many other verses in the Quran that praises those who have knowledge. But I want to talk about the ma'rifah Islamiyya, or the Islamic knowledge, and how that differs from the Western epistemology or the Western knowledge. This is very important to understand because this is the course that I'll be teaching, inshallah. What is ma'rifah Islamiyya? What is the Islamic knowledge? And what are the methods that we take to acquire knowledge? So this will be, inshallah ta'ala, the main topic that I will be teaching, inshallah ta'ala. But before that, let me just mention a few verses from the Quran in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks the al-ilm and the hikmah. Many times when we speak about knowledge, we think that knowledge is equal to wisdom. But if you look at the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala differentiates between the two. Knowledge is different than the hikmah. Allah says, يُؤْتِ الْحِكْمَةَ مَنْ يَشَاءُ وَمَنْ يُؤْتَ الْحِكْمَةَ فَقَدْ أُوتِيَ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives wisdom to whoever He wants. And Allah says, whoever possesses hikmah or wisdom, فَقَدْ أُوتِيَ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا, he was given much good. So the wisdom comes when the person attains the knowledge, and then the person uses the knowledge in the right way. So the Prophet ﷺ mentioned in many hadith that a person who is seeking the knowledge, even the malaika will lower their wings, and the fish in the ocean will seek forgiveness for the one who is pursuing knowledge. And it was the tradition of the Prophet ﷺ that every time a companion would come to ask, the Prophet ﷺ would say, Marhaban bi talib al-ilm, welcome, O student of knowledge. So when we speak about knowledge, and this is not only the Islamic knowledge, this could be any knowledge that a person is learning, there are foundations that the Quran lays out. If you pursue knowledge from these foundations, then that knowledge will be beneficial. If we don't have those foundations, then our knowledge won't have any benefit. It might help us temporarily, but it won't help us attain the ultimate success, which is attaining the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Jannah. And if you look at the Islamic civilizations, you've seen many scholars who came different times. Knowledge was the key from the time of the Prophet ﷺ until the downfall of the Ottoman Empire. You see many scholars who came different times, and their main thing was seeking knowledge, because this deen and this Islam is based on knowledge. It's not based on imitating someone else or following blindly someone else. It is about the evidence and the proof that you bring. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَفَمَنْ كَانَ عَلَى بَيِّنَةٍ مِّن رَبِّهِ وَيَتْلُوهُ شَاهِدٌ مِّنْهُ. That the one who is in a clear evidence And not just that he has a clear evidence, وَيَتْلُوهُ شَاهِدٌ مِّنْهُ. His action supports the evidence. So he has both. He has the knowledge, which is the evidence, the clear or the proof. He also has the action, which proves the evidence. So when we speak about the ma'rifah or the Islamic knowledge, Imam al-Ghazali, he has a book called Shifa al-Ghalil, one of the Usul al-Fiqh books, which is an advanced book, but because this part of the Usul al-Fiqh, it's very important to understand that the subject of Usul al-Fiqh deals with adillah, it deals with evidences, it deals with, how do you know what you know? You come to a conclusion, or you see that this is what I believe, and then the Usul al-Fiqh teaches you how do you come to that conclusion. So it is a very important subject, especially nowadays when we see many people who are questioning about many things in Islam. I would suggest for the students of knowledge to seek and pursue the Usul al-Fiqh, because it gives you the logic and the reason behind the Sharia. So Imam al-Ghazali talks about few things or few points that helps us attain knowledge. When we talk about knowledge, as I said, it could be anything. Knowledge could be knowing how to ride a bicycle, knowing how to drive a car. That's also part of the knowledge. But he divides the knowledge into two. A knowledge that we can attain with our perception, memory, or experience, and a knowledge that we cannot attain from our perception, but it has to come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we will also see how the scholars of Islam, when they dealt with knowledge that comes from testimony, shahada, or that comes from, for example, a memory, how they verified those knowledge. We have the science of hadith, right? And the science of hadith, you have the scholars who are verifying whether this report or this hadith is authentic or not. They will look at the character of the one who is reporting the hadith. They will look at the qualifications and the credentials of the person who is reporting the hadith, because that's the way you verify the knowledge. So Imam al-Ghazali mentioned that these are the perceptions, or these are the 5 sources that helps us attain knowledge. Number one is perceptions. That includes what you see, what you touch, and what you smell. That's the way you acquire knowledge. And the second is the al-aql, or ilm al-batin, which is that which resides in your heart. It is something, it's introspection, it is something that exists inside you, you feel it. That's also a way of acquiring knowledge. And the third is the memory. You've known something in the past, you recall an event. That's also a way of attaining knowledge. And then the last one is the testimony, or the shahada. Testimony is someone else is telling you something. For example, someone says, you ask someone what time is now, and then someone says, it's 7:30 or it's 8 o'clock. So now you know the time because someone else is telling you. Now let's look at each one of these, how the Islam deals with it. We will come to the perceptions and the sensory perception, but let's start with the testimony. When someone tells you something, what is the Quranic teachings for that? Let's say someone brings the news, someone is testifying something. How does the Quran deals with that? There are many ayat in the Quran. First, Allah says, "In ja'akum fasiqun binaba'in fatabayyanu." That if a person comes to you with the news, then verify that. This is the news of the knowledge that comes from testimony. You hear this from the media, or someone else is telling you something. Allah says, just don't take that information. You have to verify. You go to the bottom line of the story. So we verify the knowledge that we get from testimony or from other sources. And we also see that Allah says in many ayat in the Quran that those who reject the day of resurrection, they don't have a yaqeen, they don't have a certainty What they have is a dhann. They're just thinking. It's assumptions, but they don't have a clear proof or a clear certainty or yaqeen. So that's number one. When we talk about testimony, the Islamic foundation for that is going to the bottom line, verifying the information. Now we go to the second one, which is the memory. How do you rely on memory? Or let's say that someone memorized a hadith and then he wants to narrate the hadith to someone else. What is the Islamic foundation for that? The Islamic foundation for that is that this person must be reliable. This person must have the testimony of other people that he has or she has a strong memory. And we see this in the hadith, in Jarh wa Ta'dil, when they critique certain narrations, they say that so and so, his hadith is not acceptable because he had a weak memory. Or he memorized many hadith, but later in his life he forgot what he had memorized. And this is a way of verifying and attaining the knowledge. So that's the memory. And we can go on, there are many other examples that I can give. And then we go to the last part, which is the perceptions. The perception is what you see and hear. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that what you see and what you hear is not only limited to your faculties, but what you see outwardly, it is actually something that affects inside you. I give you an example. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, for the people who look at the universe, Allah says, لَهُمْ قُلُوبٌ لَا يَفْقَهُونَ بِهَا. They have hearts, but they do not understand. وَلَهُمْ أَعْيُنٌ لَا يُبْصِرُونَ بِهَا. They have eyes, but they cannot see. وَلَهُمْ آذَانٌ لَا يَسْمَعُونَ بِهَا. They have ears, but they cannot hear. What's the meaning of that? Does that mean that the disbelievers cannot see physically? Of course they can see. Does that mean that the disbelievers don't have the intellect to understand? Of course they do have. But we have to understand that when we talk about the sensory perceptions in the Islamic foundations, there is something called tazkiyah, which is related to something that's beyond the physical world that we cannot dissect, which is the qalb and the heart. That's why in Surah Ar-Rahman, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the two things. One of them is something that we can see with sensory perceptions, and the other one is something that we cannot see without our qalb, without our heart. So Allah says, الشمس والقمر بحسبان والنجم والشجر يسجدان. If you look at those two ayat, many times we read the Quran, but we don't really reflect the deep meaning behind the verses and the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In these two ayat, Allah says, الشمس والقمر بحسبان. That the sun and the moon, you use that for calculations. We all know that. It doesn't require introspection or to look at your heart. It is something that we can see. It's practical. There is the lunar calendar, and there is also a solar calendar. We as a Muslim, we use the lunar calendar to determine the beginning of Hajj and the beginning of Ramadan and so forth. It is a bihusban, it's something that we can see and experience. But then if you go to the second ayah, Allah says, وَالنَّجْمُ وَالشَّجَرُ يَسْجُدَانِ. That there is the tree, the star and the tree, they make sujood, they prostrate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is something that you cannot see just with your own eyes. It has to penetrate, it has to go to your heart. That's why a believer, when he looks at this creation, he doesn't only look, the physical part of it. He looks, the meaning behind it. You see, that's why a believer, when he looks at the star and the tree, he looking, the meaning behind these things, which is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created this. So the prostration and the sujood is something that you cannot see with your eyes, but you can see with your heart. وَالنَّجْمُ وَالشَّجَرُ يَسْجُدَانِ. If we give a practical example, it would be like, in a traffic light. What do you have? You have the green light and the red light, right? If you look at the object, the red light. What's the meaning behind it? Stop, right? But do you see stop written there? But there is a meaning behind it, right? That's why a believer, when he looks at the universe, he's not only looking the object or the element, but he's looking the meaning behind the object. That's why in the Quran Allah says, سَنُرِيهِمْ آيَاتِنَا فِي الْآفَاقِ وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَهُمْ أَنَّهُ الْحَقِّ أَوَلَمْ يَكْفِ بِرَبِّكَ أَنَّهُ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. Allah says that surely we will show them our signs on the horizons and also within themselves, until it becomes clear to them that this Quran is the truth. So we rely on sensory perceptions for the physical world, the things that we hear, the things that we can touch and smell. But there are things that our mind cannot comprehend, and this is where reason and revelation come together. Many times people say, well, there is something called, common rationality, and there is a reason or logic, and then there is a revelation. If people don't have these basic foundations, they may think that there is a conflict or a contradiction between the revelation that comes from Allah and the reason. If we understand these basics and the Islamic understanding of knowledge, then we won't have an issue reconciling between the wahi, the revelation, and the aql, the reason. One of the great scholars of our ummah, Ibn Taymiyyah, he wrote a book, دَرْءُ تَعَارُضُ الْعَقْلِ وَالنَّقْلِ. In that book he talks about how the sound reason would be in line with the revelation. He says if you see a conflict, it's either because of the sound, the reason is corrupted, or the text that the person is reading is not authentic. So he said, but if the reason is sound and the text is authentic, then he says that there's no conflict, they don't collide. So speaking about that, let's look at the role of the wahi, the unseen, in our lives. There are things that Allah says that if people try their best in this physical world, they won't be able to attain it, because it's part of the unseen. No one can conquer this knowledge. As Allah says, وَلِلَّهِ الْمَشْرِقُ وَالْمَغْرِبُ فَأَيْنَمَا تُوَلُّوا فَثَمَّ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ. Anywhere you face, anywhere you direct your face, whether it's east or west, you will find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What's the meaning of that? The meaning of that is, according to some of the scholars, that the people who want to make discoveries and they look at the universe, every time they make a discovery or they think that they have solved a complex problem, that discovery itself will lead them to a bigger one, and then that one will lead them into a bigger one, because they cannot conquer the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we have to understand that in our mind, in our aql, there is a limit, and we cannot go beyond that limit. Imam al-Ghazali, in his book Al-Munqidh min al-Dalal, he talks about, this is deliverance from error. That book, he talks about how even your own sensory perception sometimes could misguide you. That's why he said even the scholars of the Muslims during the Golden Age, even when they have the object in front of them, like I have this one right in front of me, they will say this is a bottle of water, وَالْعِلْمُ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ, but Allah knows best. That's how they used to be. I see this is a laptop, right? The Islamic knowledge is, but I would say this is a laptop that I can see, but وَالْعِلْمُ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ, but Allah knows best. Why? Because you cannot attain exactitude or certainty with your own perceptions. When you see at the shadow at a distance, you think it's fixed, but if you come closer, it's moving. There are things that you see, you think it's a reality, and then after a while it disappears. You see, the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he was debating with his people فلما رأى القمر بازغا قال هذا ربي فلما أفل قال لئن لم يهدني ربي لأكونن من القوم الضالين. When he saw the moon, he said, this is my Lord. فلما أفل قال لئن لم يهدني ربي. Then when the moon said, he said, لئن لم يهدني ربي لأكونن من القوم الضالين. If it wasn't, the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I would have been with the people of Dhalin, those who were misguided. And then he said, فَلَمَّا رَأَى الشَّمْسَ بَازِغَةً. When he saw the sun, بَازِغَةً, it's clear on the sky, قَالَ هَذَا رَبِّي هَذَا أَكْبَرُ. He said, this is my Lord, the greatest. فَلَمَّا أَفَلَتْ. Because remember, the sun has a beginning and it has an end. In the morning it rises, and then at the evening it sets. So it's not permanent. Although when you see the star, you may think this is a big creation. When you look at the sun and you look at yourself, of course you belittle yourself because this is a big, star. I'm just a small human being. But this is just the perception or the sensory that you have. That's why Ali radiallahu anhu, he said it a very good statement when we talk about these things. He said, when you look at the cosmos or the universe, and you look at this star and the moon, do not belittle yourself. Why? Because all the things that exist outside of you, all the things that you see in the cosmos, it exists in you. All the miracles that you see outside of you exist in you. What's the meaning of that? It means that there's so many secrets and mysteries inside you that you cannot even understand. And this is the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the human beings. Allah says, وَفِي أَنفُسِكُمْ أَفَلَا تُبْصِرُونَ. And don't you see your own soul, your own selves? But because look at the human beings, there are so many conflicting behaviors. Sometimes we are sad, sometimes we are happy, sometimes we cry, we laugh. We have all of these things inside us. And we'll come to this, how the tazkiyah addresses the soul of the human beings. So when we talk about the revelation and the reason, as I said, we rely on the revelation for the things that we cannot understand in this universe, the things that we cannot comprehend. Like the unseen, what's happening, what will happen in the barzakh. It is something that we cannot understand. It's beyond this universe. By the time we put the person in the grave, khalas, that person has taken a different journey. The same thing, the day of judgment, the things that will happen. How do we know that? We cannot know that with our reason. We know that through the revelation and through the wahy. Through the wahy. So those are the basic foundations of acquiring knowledge. And also when we talk about knowledge, we have to understand the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min ilmin la yanfa'. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to seek refuge in Allah from a knowledge that has no use, a knowledge that is a benefit. So even in Islam, what is the knowledge that has no use? It's any knowledge that won't bring you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It has no use. In the Quran, Allah talks about a knowledge that people acquire, but it has no use. Like magic. People learn magic, right? Allah says, وَيَتَعَلَّمُونَ مَا يَنْفَعُهُمْ مَا يَضُرُّهُمْ وَلَا يَنْفَعُهُمْ. They're actually learning something that's harming them. It's not benefiting them. And we see many times how many people pursue, something that eventually or at the end will harm them, it won't benefit them. Many things, right? The things that people invent at the end, it destroys the people. Right? I mean, of course, there is, in different aspects, there is a use of it, but the knowledge that the Prophet ﷺ sought refuge in Allah is any knowledge that has no use. Min ilmin la yanfa'. The last thing is, what's the goal? What is the aim of the ilm? the goal is not attaining knowledge. That's not the goal. The goal is for you to understand your purpose in this life and to prepare yourself for the day of judgment. Any knowledge that you learn, it could be, the worldly knowledge, the deen, any knowledge that you pursue, you have to keep in mind that the goal should be for you to realize why are you here and where are you going. As Allah says, فَأَيْنَ تَذْهَبُونَ. Right? So this is the goal is for you to realize your maqsad and your purpose in life. Sometimes when we learn knowledge, and I'm going to give an example. Sometimes, some people, they seek knowledge or they pursue knowledge just because they want to become scholars, or they just want to become famous, or they want people to respect them. And if a person has that kind of intention, you might have knowledge, people might respect you, but at the end you won't have a tranquility and peace of mind. Because what you're trying to do is you're pleasing other people. You always want the attention of other people. And if your intention from the beginning was pure and was to attain the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you'd be in a state of tranquility. Imam al-Ghazali is one example that I would give. Imam al-Ghazali he had two stages in his life. The one stage was when he was teaching at the college of Nizamiya. And Nizamiya in Baghdad at that time, it was the most prestigious college in Iraq. That's where the brilliant students used to go for knowledge. And people used to attend his lectures. Like thousands of students would come. Even great scholars from Baghdad would come and attend. And he was young when he became a professor or a teacher in that school. Imam al-Ghazali in that stage, he was honest with himself. He said that I was giving all of this knowledge and I was teaching the people, but he said inside I was empty. That's what he said. He said inside I was empty. People used to respect me. I would go to the rulers. I would give a speech. People would ask me questions, and I would answer them eloquently. And he said, "Batini, inside me I was empty." That's the time he withdrew himself from teaching the college, and he took the journey of purifying himself. In the second stage of his life, that's where he wrote the book Ihya Ulumuddin, reviving the knowledge of the deen. That's why if you compare between the two stages, you find in the first stage, in the introductions, you can see that he was proud of himself and his achievements. Like he will write, this book is mainly for for great students. If you're a Mowlid, this book is not for you. If you don't, meet these prerequisites, you shouldn't read this book. He will write that in the beginning or the introduction. That was the first stage when he was like feeling that he has accomplished. In the second stage of his life, he will write in the introduction that know that the beginning of knowledge and the beginning of guidance is to purify yourself, because he has experienced that seeking knowledge without good intention at the end won't bring inner peace. It might bring attention, it might give you fame, it might give you some position, but at the end of the day, that's nothing if you don't have tumanina, if you don't have inner peace. So the point here is that Islamic knowledge, or any knowledge, the point is for you to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's for you to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So those are just an introduction, inshallah ta'ala, to the knowledge. I know maybe some of you are expecting that I should, encourage, people to seek knowledge, or to talk about the hadith that encourages, people to seek knowledge. But I think you're already familiar with those hadith and ayat. I just wanted, to make this muhadara, this lecture, to be more practical, because I know that, some of us, are in college, and you might study philosophy. It could be maybe part of the requirement. and then they might teach you the Western epistemology or Western way of knowing things. If you don't have this information or the Islamic way of seeking knowledge, and then you might not be able to defend your religion and your deen. That's why knowing the Islamic way of acquiring knowledge is very important, because once you take the course, you will have something in the back of your mind that would enable you to distinguish the right from the wrong. So inshallah ta'ala, starting tomorrow, we will look at how the ma'rifah, the Islamic knowledge that deals with the fiqh, the ma'rifah that deals with tazkiyah, and the ma'rifah that deals with the hadith and the Quran. So inshallah ta'ala, that would be the topics that we will discuss in the upcoming days, inshallah ta'ala. So if you have any questions or any comments, inshallah ta'ala, you can ask, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair.